right. Good morning, everybody. As our participants start to flood in here, we are already in the mid 30s. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is the WPGA Winter Learning Series. This is episode 8. We've got 2 more, but this is going to be a really, really fun one. So, turning our attention back towards the retail side of things. We don't typically have presenters from within the committee, but we are very fortunate on the education committee to have Danny Rainbow and Josue Reyes, who are both retail experts. For those that are looking at Danny's screen, he has ran out of room on his back wall for more merchandising awards. So I think it's well worth it to listen to Danny. And Josue, obviously very successful at Kohler, and has since started his own business, Reyes Retail. So these guys are the real deal. They're going to teach us some really, really cool retail strategies. I saw a really quick sneak peek of their slides. We are in for a real treat. Ground rules, mics off, cameras off. If you do have a question, I monitor the chat. I will stop us in real time, read your question out loud. I think that's all I've got. Gentlemen, take it away. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, Derek, thanks for the introduction here. I'm going to go ahead and get the slide shared here. So let me know when it's up and running.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, looks good.
All right, guys. Well, again, to Derek's point, greatly appreciate everybody's time today. Danny and I kind of splitting today's presentation. I'm going to be touching on the future of retail, kind of touching on, the whole aspect of what we've been all accustomed to, the brick and mortar retail experience, to now where everything's kind of shifting to e-commerce, and of course how AI is starting to impact retail. And then I'm going to hand it over to Danny, and he's going to give you some insights from this year's 2026 PGA Merchandiser of the Year conference, which, as you guys should know, Danny, of course, being a national award winner, was there present and is going to share with us great insights of what's discussed, at that conference with many of the other retailers throughout the U.S. So we'll get right into it. As Derek mentioned, any questions, just, raise your hands or anything like that. But I'm going to be focusing on, the importance of e-commerce and AI and the impact that's really having right now, and that we're going to see, of course, moving forward within our retail operations. So, when we think about that brick and mortar, that's that in-store, that we've all been accustomed to, but that experience is really shifting, over the last few years. When you think about, 10 plus years ago, you're talking about your golf shop, you're talking about, Dick's Sporting Goods, Ed and Watts, those sort of brick and mortar, locations. Primary goal was honestly, you're just trying to sell inventory off the shelf. From a technology standpoint, you basically had static, very simple signage, very basic point of sale systems that just handle more of the transaction type inventory. We weren't really too concerned at that point. I would say it was, the mentality was stack it high, watch it fly kind of deal. Many vendors had carried deeper inventory than what they do today. So that's, of course, just changed. And then, of course, our staff and their roles. I mean, honestly, yes, within the golf industry, it's a little different. We have golf professionals that teach, play, do a lot more than just behind the counter. But, within retail, that's typically what the role of staff would be, was more of just a simple cashier, stocker. However, as things change, does the merchandising side of things. So today, when we think about what is our primary goal with our members and our guests that visit our golf shops and your resorts, it's now more than ever more important about building brand loyalty and kind of driving that community. So thinking of ways to continue to engage with your members and guests is probably more important than just getting them in the shop out of your space. From a technology standpoint, of course, I mean, again, we are all seeing it across many different channels, but the aspects of QR codes, interactive, mobile, of course, that's changed immensely. When Apple introduced, the iPhone and how that's really changed our world and how we see things. So, merchandising has impacted that. Inventory, same scenario. It's not more about just, hey, just get a bunch of product, put it on the floor, stack it high, and let it sell. Now, we're getting into visual merchandising. Now we're doing more storytelling. Now we have access to digital catalogs. Members, guests have the option to see the product first before it's actually even hits your floor. So a lot of the way we're now showcasing products and how we're promoting it and sharing that is changed. And then, of course, our staff roles have really changed. Now members and guests see us more as the product experts within our shops. At certain facilities, you can be considered somewhat of a concierge of just everything within your retail offering. So no question that we are seeing this change within merchandising, not only within golf retail, but just all retail. How technology and everything is shifting and changing that. So just as we've within the golf industry, we have a tendency to kind of always be a little bit behind the eight ball when new things are coming about. But a lot of changes are coming, and it's good for us to kind of be ahead of it and understand the impact behind it. So, we've had other conversations and presentations about e-commerce, but again, that is one that it continues to be an importance now, basically for our digital age consumer. The uniqueness about having an e-commerce platform within your retail operations, it's unlike a physical shop like your golf shop that has an opening and closing hours of operations. An e-commerce store is open 24/7, never closes. So again, it's a way allowing your members to shop at their convenience beyond your standard regular shop hours. So, e-commerce is really changing the way consumers now shop, how they, make their purchase decisions. So, if you're still at a facility where maybe e-commerce has not become a service or a product of interest, it's something to consider. The other aspect with e-commerce is, of course, the shift in demographics that we're already seeing and are going to continue to see within the golf industry. I think we can all say that, the golf industry has been strong the last 4 or 5 years, and it doesn't feel like it's really slowing down any point. But the biggest thing, that we have to think about is, there's going to be a new wave of younger, more tech savvy golfers, that are entering the sport right now. And, with those of you that have teenagers or even small little kids, I mean, they're on those platforms, they're on their mobile device 24/7. And that's how they're now learning how to shop, how to buy. So it's very important for us and within our merchandising is to keep that in mind that, the older demographic that, might still not be using, that likes to physically go to a pro shop or that likes to physically visit a retail space and make their purchase, in a few more years, you're going to see that trend really change. So understanding that and planning for that is crucial. And of course, e-commerce allows you to expand on that offering and gravitate to it, because that's honestly where things are really going to continue to grow year over year. Other aspects of the e-commerce, in today's digital first golfer, again, it's the local reach. Years ago, if you wanted to get Whistling logo merchandise, an Aaron Hills, a Lasonia, you name them, you physically had to go in their shops and physically buy that logoed garment or that gift. E-commerce now, of course, has opened up that reach, outside of selling, out of your golf shop, out of your town, your city, for guests or former members or family of members, who may not visit the club on a regular basis. So, you got to keep e-commerce in mind and the reach that it will provide you at your club, depending, the offering and how, whether it's fully private or if it's open to the public, having that reach nowadays is really important within your merchandising operation. And of course, e-commerce, what that does is allows you to get a lot of data and information on your members. Understanding what your members are buying will help you as the buyers make better decisions on what you might want to carry in your golf shops. Having an e-commerce presence allows you to expand your retail offerings than what your shop may allow due to square footage. So nowadays, it's not just let's just throw a website up and see if we can move some merchandise, but over time, what you're going to learn with your e-commerce is you'll start to get a good understanding of what specific members are purchasing, what brands, what price points are selling. That could definitely help in identifying maybe that merchandise mix within your retail space to what you might be doing on an e-commerce platform. So again, nowadays data is everything, as we all know. Other aspect of the e-commerce is again, improving your customer experience, and how can e-commerce do that? The first, personalization. So with all these new AI tools that are out there, which we'll touch on here in another slide or two, you're able to get product recommendations. You'll be able to get a lot of data and history on purchases, price points, what your members are looking for, what they've previously purchased. And all of that will help in identifying, not only how you can now create more of a personalized shopping experience for your member and or guest based on their historical, and that sort of data is going to continue to improve and become much more valuable as the years come. Other aspects of the e-commerce side is the convenience. You have the opportunity to buy online, pick up and shop. I'm sure most of us, and I would say likely our wives, my wife, an example, I don't think she ever goes to the grocery store anymore now. She just orders online, has it picked up, or most of the time sends me to go pick it up for her. So the aspect of the convenience of that we're seeing the last few years, with your Walmarts, your Targets, your buy online, pick up and shop, I feel confident that we're going to get to this sort of position within our own retail operations at a certain point where a member just wants to swing by, that front entrance, pick it up and keep on going. So, these are things that, will further enhance, our customer member experience within our facilities. Very valuable here, of course, is product education. Danny might be able to correct me, but when we were at the MOI conference, Danny, they had mentioned there was over 350 or maybe 400 men's apparel lines.
400, I believe.
Was it 400 that they said, correct? So
Yep.
imagine, I mean, again, we all know we can't carry every single apparel brand that's out there, but given the amount of apparel brands that are growing or now that are becoming about, different types of fabrications, there's been some changes in that. It's not as easy to continue to keep our staff educated on, the fits, the fabric, the details of it. E-commerce is a great tool, great way to kind of help drive a lot of that. So, when we think about, having our sales team or our golf pros or retail clerks who work the shop floor, getting them to know and have a good understanding of what we're selling is crucial. But again, e-commerce is now allowing for most to be able to share a lot of the product details that sometimes, even ourselves can't really right off the bat know or understand. So again, this is another way of how an e-commerce platform can help, your retail operations, not just thinking of generating a sale, but also the aspect of, the product itself and and the descriptions and details behind it. And then, of course, most importantly, strengthening the loyalty, again, having an e-commerce platform where you can communicate directly to your members about only member drops, member only discounts, things like that. Hey, here's a new collection that's coming about. E-commerce allows you to kind of really do a lot of these things to further not only, again, thinking about just generating additional sales or expanding your product assortment, but it really comes down to is how do we continue to improve and enhance our members and or guest experience. And I think over time, you're going to continue to see how this new digital world that we're currently jumping into from an AI standpoint and an e-commerce, you're going to see how that's going to help immensely within your retail operation. So there's kind of a overview on the e-commerce side of what the future kind of holds and what's continuing to come. And now we're just going to switch gears over into the AI aspects of its impact that it's having within retail. I mean, again, I think nowadays that was one of the things that I took away at the show this year more than anything, especially in the area of point of sale systems. A lot of AI, verbiage, AI this, AI that. So sometimes we look at that more from a data driven sort of information and we don't think about retail so much, but AI is really impacting the merchandising and retail side of the business as well. So when we think about, a shop floor plan, like what we're seeing here on this slide, before AI, that was a manual, time consuming process. You had to have some sort of designer or developer, whoever, create it, lay it all out. The cost of doing something like that was significant. How you laid out your floor plan really depended on more human intuition or potential historical data. Hey, most hats, number one, number two seller might be headwear units wise. So let's give headwear a bigger space on the floor. So a lot of the decision making on that was more on just intuition. And then, of course, basic analytic tools were being used on just how you would lay out a floor plan within your retail spaces. So again, very useful tool before AI came, but very manual, very time consuming, and a lot of times very expensive, to work with a designer or firm to help you map out your shop layout, redesigns, and things like that. So with AI now, it's completely different. I mean, visual presentations, layouts, planograms. I mean, you're now seeing 3D designs that give you a very, very good visual of what your shop would look like versus the old standard sort of planogram. And of course, with AI now, I mean, it's as like you heard me mention a minute ago, it's a lot of data driven, decisions with real time analytics. So what that means is, rather than, using your intuition about immediate buys or decisions for your business, AI will now help eliminate that lag time, allowing retailers to be more agile and more proactive on, their decision making with what they're wanting their shop to be. From a dynamic displays, adapting to traffic, that refers more to a shop's ability to adjust to its operations, pricing, traffic flow. A lot of the data that you can get from that will help drive a lot of that for you. And then, of course, personalized experience. Now you have a better understanding of, what your members are buying, what they're looking for, being able to make those, changes to your offerings much more quicker than what we would used to in the past. It's very important. And of course, immediate feedback, getting the data, getting the information right then and there versus, having to do some surveys or things like that before which took time. Sometimes you really didn't get much of the data or information you wanted. AI is having a huge impact on how we're now designing, our golf shop spaces, our clubhouse, our simulator rooms, all of these things that come into play. So very important to kind of understand that. And then visual merchandising, same scenario. The previous process was very static, very manual. Now, you're basically changing, your consumers' behavioral on how they purchase. So now we can start to identify, what brands, what our members or guests are buying offline, online, browsing patterns, purchase history. So e-commerce, having that platform will allow you to generate and get a lot of that information that then ultimately you can apply within your retail operations from a visual merchandising standpoint. Interactive digital signage, I mean, that's kind of the new wave. I was very engaged in that. I was just in New York last fall and experienced some of those where, again, you got these smart mirrors. You can see how something looks on you before you even try it on. It's crazy. And I know, again, some of this stuff, it's very costly at this stage, but with time, it's only going to get less expensive and it's only going to become more efficient. That, a lot of the retail spaces, no matter how big or small you might be, will be able to start to implement this, in the next few years within their retail operations if they wish to. Virtual shopping, of course, again, we're all kind of doing that, but also, optimizing your shelf displays, how you're displaying merchandise in your golf shop, where it's being placed. It's very important because, of course, all of our shops are different square footage wise. We're all trying to maximize the dollar per square footage. So understanding how much you should dedicate in a shelving unit or a wall display or on the floor is extremely valuable data that makes a lot of the buying decision easier, but also ultimately will lead to higher sales and more profitability within your shops. AI impact again on visual merchandising. Before AI, a lot of the visual merchandising relied on emotional intelligence, the lighting, the textures, overall spacing. Display changes had to be planned in advance. Sometimes, they take a month, or sometimes certain shops would do it quarterly. Sometimes once or twice a year, they would change displays. And then, of course, customer flow, traffic patterns, product placement, as I just touched on the previous slide, wasn't really analyzed accordingly. It was just more of a hunch. We've always had that product on that wall, just keep it there, things like that. But with AI now, visual merchandising, now you're using more deeper learning to stimulate, shop layouts, creating that personal experience store by store, predicting what will work next. From display changes, using historical data, product positioning, and behavioral purchases. Now you can create new visual layouts of your golf shops within minutes. So if you wanted to get a feel of like, what would the shop look if I move around these tables, these four ways, we put hat over here versus over there. Now you can create a lot of that visual in minutes. And then, the actual aspect of, a computer AI can now vision, analyze a shopper movement throughout hot zones within your shops. So again, it's allowing you to now place higher margin items, new arrivals, and specific spots throughout your retail space. So, it's going to change the way we look at visual merchandising for sure over the next few years. And really, again, we kind of just touched on a little bit about, what's current, but also future impact. So again, one of the things that you're starting to see, but I think you're going to continue to see over the next few years with AI's impact is, the in-store experience, your checkout, free shopping, experience is going to continue. Interactive assistant will continue to be there. Virtual try-ons, you're already seeing that throughout, not only in actual retail spaces, but you can even do it online now with specific apps. And then, of course, the aspect of us being, that golf pro, golf assistant, retail person assisting, in the purchase. I think over time we're going to have staff members in our shop that might become, more of a personal stylist, assistant, being able to showcase different brands, different options, what's coming new to members well in advance before your shop, even hits the floor. That's going to change. And then from an operational standpoint, new logo designs, inventory management, how we price, the safety, loss preventions of products, and then of course reducing shrinkage, real time in inventory. All of these things will ultimately be impacted with AI, as we continue to see the impact that it's having already, but what's forthcoming. So again, we think about this and just from a typical operational standpoint, but in your merchandising side of the business, you're going to see a lot of new waves of changes on how we, create more experiences, how we merchandise, how we lay out our floor plans. This, is going to continue to improve and enhance. So, you guys will get a copy, I believe, of the presentation. But of course, from an e-commerce standpoint, resources I can share with you within golf specific. You've T-commerce legends, Shopify are of course, kind of your 3, 4 main ones that are kind of out there. Of course, with my business, we do service e-commerce, so we can always sidebar separately on that and what we do. But again, for those of you that might not still not have looked at an e-commerce solution, these will be ones that you should look into and vet out to see what makes most sense for your club and your facility. And then from an AI resources standpoint, again, everybody kind of understands and knows Chat GPT. I think most are using it, emails, communications, things like that. But there are many other AI applications and resources out there that, some are at no charge, some do have some fees and subscription programs. But for those of you that might be looking at maybe redesigning your current shop floor plan, or maybe you're working on a new space, there's some AI applications out there that you can look at. Visual merchandising, again, that whole aspect of you want to show a member that this is what that product looks like on you. Image generators, there's a bunch out there as well. And then new logo design, shirt design builders. We no longer need to hire firms to do new logo designs for us. We don't need to pay a lot of money to have some designer come in and create a bunch of different logos for your club. There's so many different AI applications out there now, both free and some that are subscription based, that will allow you to create new logos for your club or design new different t-shirts and different logo hits that you can start applying into your retail operations that ultimately will help with your retail sales. So that is the gist of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Danny at this time and let him take it from here. Danny?
All right. Thanks very much, Josue. Great job. I'll just mention kind of as we transition here, if anybody has questions about some of the things Josue presented, feel free to write those into the chat, drop them in the chat there, and we can answer those either as we go or at the conclusion of the presentation here. And likewise, as I'm going through some things, feel free to put anything in the chat as well, because we'd love to hear from you and hear your questions and make sure we address those. So I'm going to touch on kind of some insights from this year's PGA Magazine Merchandiser of the Year conference. So for those who aren't familiar with this conference, anyone who wins the Merchandiser Award at a section level is usually invited to this conference. It's put on by the PGA Magazine. It happens in the couple days leading into the PGA show. And it's a really cool opportunity to be in the room with section award winners on the merchandising front from around the country, and kind of just have a few days of having breakout sessions and hearing what's working in different people's operations. It's a mixture, of course, of public, private, resort professionals. So just really cool to hear what everyone's doing and what's working for them. And that's kind of what I want to do today is report kind of what some of the overarching themes and feedback was from the conference, because I've found it to be incredibly valuable for myself and for our operation here at Century World. And, I'm sure it'll be the same for everybody to kind of hear what some of these top merchandisers are focused on. So the sort of theme of the conference this year was selling the game, and I think maybe even more appropriate, what the theme almost kind of evolved into during the week was almost more of selling the experience and selling the facility, but all in tying into the game of golf. But the point is, you know, of kind of this theme and where I'm going with this is, as you see on the slide here, golf merchandise is not just logo apparel anymore. What is today's consumer looking for? What people were saying at this conference and that we're seeing here too, people are looking for that meaning, that connection, that experience that's going to drive them to make a purchase. The buying behavior of the guest, seems to have changed. It's not just buying purely for the logo, but it's really that piece that's going to tell a story and make the person feel that experience that they had when they purchased the piece. So these guests can buy their golf apparel from anywhere, right? So but why buy it from us? Because we are going to provide something that gives them that connection to the experience they had. So what are we selling? We're selling the place where they had the experience. We're selling certain elements of the actual experience that they had, kind of just trying to regarner that feeling of being there. They hopefully had a great experience at your facility. Whether you're a private club and they're there several times a week and they kind of want to, recreate that feeling, or whether you're a destination that they go to one time and they're only going to play your course once in their life, that it's the same idea, that piece of merchandise is kind of trying to create that feeling of being there. And when they have that positive experience, it's going to trigger them to make that purchase. So it's a memory trigger, and it extends that golf experience beyond just the round of golf that they had, but actually into something that they're going to experience. Anytime they see that piece of merchandise, use it. So it's going to remind them of their great day, not just show a logo. It's going to provide that connection for them. So we can jump to the next one. Yeah, telling a deeper story. So a lot of conversation was had about the way that people are achieving what I was just talking about, the way that they're achieving that, piece of merchandise that creates that connection, that commemorates that experience, is through alternate logos. Alternate logos was a huge topic, something that a lot of people are doing. If you're not doing it yet, would definitely encourage you to explore it at your facility. We don't have an alternate logo yet at Century World, but it's definitely something that we are trying to figure out, is what is that correct alternate logo for us, because these alternate logos, they're meant to complement your primary logo. They don't replace it. You're not getting rid of your old logo. You're still keeping your core logo, but these alternate logos are just that complementing piece, an additional option, and they're inspired by different things. It can be like a certain wildlife that you see a lot on the property, certain landmarks on your golf course or on your property, or something that's even maybe not on your property, but it's visible from your property. It can be centered around a culinary experience. There's someone there who kind of their big signature was that on the turn they served all these delicious smoked meats, and so they literally had a logo of a meat smoker, and things like maybe something that captures the essence of your club, the history or the tradition of it. These are all elements that kind of create that, that story that you want to tell. Going back to the wildlife one, I think there was one club that had um, an alligator that always like crossed the fairway at a certain time every day, and was like they had named it and everything, and so they had put this alligator on like everything, and it sold like crazy. It had nothing to do with the club logo, but it was, everyone who go there, the starter told them the story of this alligator that would cross the fairway, and oh, yep, he just crossed a little bit ago. He's down there by the pond now. And guests would go by and see it, and it was just something unique and different. And then they go in the shop afterwards, and they buy maybe the club logo, but they also buy the alligator logo. So just think about, what's something unique to your property that, no one else can easily copy or duplicate, or something that's just unique to your experience and is going to kind of be, potentially a highlight of the day. And it doesn't always have to be something specifically golf related. Honestly, it's often not golf related. It's, again, a wildlife or the food they had on the turn, or something like that. Okay. So why do these alternate logos work? Why are we seeing such success with them? Well, they're a fresh look. They're something that this person doesn't already have, right? They might, especially at a private club, they might have 20, 30 pieces of apparel with your logo on it. All their accessories have your logo on it. It's something they can still use or wear with pride that represents the club, but it's something fresh. It's different. You're not getting away from your brand identity necessarily. It's still something that's on brand because it commemorates the experience. It's unique to the experience at your place, but it's, again, that fresh look and something different. It's something that people are going to ask them about when they see it. It kind of creates that appeal of, you can only get this here, or it's something that's very unique to this place and to this specific experience that I had. People love the exclusivity of that. There's a huge trend going on right now toward people gravitating to those unique logos. And there's just been really strong sell through. I mean, literally everybody that was at this conference that had an alternate logo is having massive success with it, because it's just something different and it's something a little bit more exclusive. People love telling the story of why why they're wearing a meat smoker on their shirt, or why they're wearing an alligator on their shirt. Someone will see it and they're like, well, what course is that from? Or where is that from? And they relish in that. They love the being able to say, well, let me tell you all about the experience I had at this place and why I got this logo. So it's just a cool, unique aspect. Um, these alternate logos, kind of like I've been saying, they're a storytelling tool. If the logo is done well, the logo itself kind of hints at or starts to tell the story of what that unique part of the experience was, that the person can then expand on further. So it'll often answer like, why does it exist? What does it represent? Again, just something that the person can delve into more, explain a little bit more. But the big key here is, when the story that you're telling with the piece of merchandise matches the experience that person had. Okay, so they go out on the golf course, or they experience your facility for the day. They have this experience. It triggers this emotional connection in their mind to like, that was awesome. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. And then they go in to the shop, and there's something that aligns with that experience, that matches up with it. That is like the trigger moment of like, I have to buy that. I don't care if it's $200 or $300. Like, I got to have that. It's really cool. It is something that I've now emotionally invested in, emotionally connected with, and it drives that consumer to be willing to make that extra spend, right? Where they're not just looking for the cheapest piece of souvenir merchandise they can find. They're looking for something they can use proudly, wear proudly. Again, the emotional connection is what creates that. So you've got that alignment, the golf course or the service or the experience telling the same story as the merchandise. Um, Scarcity was another big topic that was discussed and that people are having a lot of success with. So limited runs of these custom items. It can be apparel or headwear. It oftentimes seems to be accessories, is where people are having a lot of success with these limited runs. So a lot of like handcrafted metals type of products, or just hand painted mugs or something like that. Just something that's really unique and truly is one of a kind. And you're typically bringing them in smaller quantities, partially to create that scarcity, also because you're not sure maybe how many of these you're going to sell. But the key is there's no guarantee of a reorder, and oftentimes there's maybe no a promise of no reorder. Like, this is all we're going to have of these. We've got 25 of these. They're numbered 1 to 25, and that's all we're ever going to sell. It takes away your risk of markdowns significantly, because you're kind of creating this demand for these pieces, and it kind of creates urgency from your customer to buy that. It doesn't create pressure necessarily, but it's just urgency from them to buy it. So they see that, and there's just this instinct that people have of, if they know it's rare and limited, uh, they want to have it. It creates that excitement. Um, on the opposite token, overbuying merchandise does not create excitement. It creates a whole bunch. If you have hundreds of the same thing, and people look at that and they see it in bulk, and that everybody's going to have it, it's a lot less excitement for the guest. Half the people walking out of here are going to have that same bag tag or that same head cover. But it's the scarcity that creates that excitement. Like, I know that I'm probably never going to see anyone in the world that has this thing that I have. So it's a lot about discipline, I think, and being sure that you're being disciplined about what quantities you're doing, how much of this you're doing. Um, it's a lot about creativity as well, right? Getting an item that is creative, tells the story, hits the mark in those ways, has that scarcity, and is something that people are going to want to jump on. So a little bit more about the scarcity topic, kind of the psychology of it. It just creates that. Touched a little bit on this, but the kind of that fear of missing out. That oh, here's this item that's special. It's exclusive. It's kind of a collectible kind of thing. I don't want to miss out on my opportunity to get this. So it encourages those immediate buying decisions, especially if, going back to the previous topic, especially if it kind of tells the story and matches up with that story of their experience. So it's just human nature to want those things, and it kind of gives that customer the urgency to go ahead and buy it now. Maybe they were only planning on spending X number of dollars in the shop today on whatever they're going to buy, but they see this thing that's that extra special item, and they're willing to go beyond their budget. And often, I didn't mention this before, but often these items can be priced at higher margins as well. Because of the scarcity, you're essentially lowering supply, you're creating demand for these items, which the economics of it allow you to price it a little bit higher and still get that price for it. Kind of a couple themes by facility type that we saw. It's probably no surprise, but just I thought worth mentioning as we recap the conference a little bit. Private clubs, not being someone myself who has worked a lot in private clubs, of just a couple of years throughout my career, and it was many years ago, but really interesting to me to hear from the private club professionals that when you talk about strategy or what makes things sell for them, almost every person that I talked to or that spoke in our breakouts was focused on the relationships with the members. If you make somebody like you, if you earn the trust of your members, they're going to want to buy from you. So it's very, very heavily focused on relationship driven selling. Obviously, you've got to have the merchandise that they want, and the things that they want to buy, but they're going to want to support you. They're going to want to buy from you. So the private club professionals were at this level were very much invested in building those relationships with the members. The public and resort facilities, obviously not seeing the same, the same customers every day, a little bit more reliant on the storytelling. Not that private clubs aren't, you still want to have those, those pieces and those logos that tell the stories. And that's special for the private club members too, but probably even more of an emphasis for public where you don't have that relationship with that guest as much, at least not a personal relationship. Maybe that guest has a bit of a relationship with your facility because they've visited it a handful of times, but it's harder to get that one-on-one personal relationship. So you see a lot more on the public and resort focused on really finding those unique pieces, those unique logos that are going to tell the story and create that urgency to buy. So, and both require that a really good, solid, intentional merchandising strategy. So we can probably skip over this next one. It's kind of redundant. I think I realized that after I put it in there, Josue. It's just kind of getting into that. But next topic, personalization. Personalization, it goes right along the theme with what I've been, kind of talking about here of the, being able to tell a story through a piece of merchandise. To make a piece personal, adding name, initials, dates, event names, that kind of thing to it. We talked about the emotional value and how people buy based on that emotion and something that brings them back to that day, brings them back to that experience. That personalization is huge for that. So if you have the ability to personalize items, ideally on site, it highly increases the likelihood that someone's going to purchase because they can add that personalization to it, make it something very unique to them. It turns just an average item into a real keepsake for that person. Obviously great for gifts, milestones, anything like that. So kind of getting into the on-site personalization topic, some tools that enable that. There are some increasing opportunities to add this at your facility. I'm sure some people on the call have already done this, but if you can engrave metal, leather, wood, anything like that on site, it gives you the ability to obviously personalize items, create that fast turnaround. You can even take very generic products that you don't buy through one of your vendors from today. There was people at this conference saying they're ordering coasters, just generic wood coasters off of Amazon, and engraving their logo into them on site, or engraving some text into them on site or something like that, allowing you to increase your margins pretty significantly because we know as soon as you put your logo on it, that piece becomes a lot more valuable. But tools like the X tool, if you may have heard of that, I'm sure some people in the call have that. The X tool gives you that great ability to personalize those items, take generic items and make them unique to your facility. Some of this personalization can, limit your reliance on vendors. If you can do this in-house, gives you some great added flexibility, great added margin, opens up your creativity a bunch for kind of just small batch ideas, little small limited runs of certain things that you can create with your own engraving machine. Finally, merchandising it's absolutely a team sport. Anybody who's ever had success in a merchandise operation, anybody who's ever won a merchandising award on a section level or national level knows that it takes a team to be successful at it. It's, involving your team in the merchandise operation. It creates ownership. It increases that engagement of your team. It builds that selling culture. And when your team cares, when your team is invested, it comes across to the customer. They can feel it. They can see when people are all rowing the boat in the same direction, so to speak, and kind of on the same page with each other. So building your culture is going to help your merchandising. Building your culture with your team getting your team invested is going to definitely help your merchandising operation. So one example of how to do that, I thought this was a really interesting thing. Puka Headwear had their national sales director in one of our breakout sessions, and he gave the example where, and I'm not putting in a plug for Puka necessarily here. You can do this with any number of vendors on any number of different types of products, but the example that he gave was they had a hat program where you can have your staff, say however many assistants you have, each allow each person to design one or two hats with the vendor. And Puka had a way to do this where they allowed each assistant to get on a Zoom call with the designer right there at the company, and they'd go through, and this assistant would pick out, the colors of the hat, the style of the hat, what kind of logo application they're going to do on it. Are they coming up with a custom logo, or just taking what they have and dropping it in a certain, application type or style? But they create this hat, and it's theirs now. They own that one, and you kind of run a little contest with it where, say, you've got 3 or 4 assistants, and each one gets a drop of 24 to 48 hats or whatever number makes sense for your operation. And now they're invested, right? They're trying to sell their hat. You have a little contest to see whose hat can sell out first, and it's they're observing the customer behavior. They're trying to push their hat, but they're seeing what the customer is reacting to for other hats in the shop. They're giving each other a hard time about whose design isn't moving, having some good spirited fun with it, hopefully. And maybe there's a little reward. Maybe it's just pride, but maybe it's a little bonus, or a little, you get to pick who's buying lunch or something like that at the end of the contest, just to, create a little extra incentive. But creates that friendly competition, that kind of sell through focus, and something that's I thought a really cool idea. So again, you can do it with any number of products, but get your team involved in designing and creating those items. So kind of just to summarize some of the key takeaways, alternate logos, if you haven't done it yet, give it a try. Start small, experiment with that a little bit, test limited runs, those smaller runs, to create scarcity. Attach a story to as many items as you possibly can. That is what today's consumer is looking for. They want the story. They want it to tell the story of their experience. Look at personalization and how you can do more of that, and get your team engaged. So lastly, selling the game never goes out of style. Selling the experience never goes out of style. It'll always be cool. It'll always be fun. So just make sure your products reflect your facility, your people, and of course, most importantly, that they tell the experience. And just, when you sell the experience, when you create that, the merchandise sells itself. So that's what I got. It was kind of a lot of information in a compact time, but I wanted to make sure we got in before the top of the hour here. We do have a few minutes left, so I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but just wanted to make sure everyone has an opportunity to open that up. So if anyone does have something, feel free to drop it in there.
Yeah, we'll monitor the chat here for the next couple minutes. I'll do the thank yous on behalf of the section while we wait to see if there's a question. But obviously, big time thank you to Danny and Josue. A lot of really cool stuff in there. Danny, there is an Instagram account. I don't know if they talk about it, who does the alternate logos. Maybe I'll start right there. Are you familiar with this Instagram account of the guy? Maybe somebody in the chat would know, but yeah, there is. I saw that about a year ago. It started popping up where different people were doing, different alternate logos. So he is out there. No, we're still.
Are you talking about Matt Adamski from Sweetens Cove by chance?
No, now that our phones listen to us, so it's gonna know that I'm talking about alternate logos. I'll get it soon enough. I'll send you a text when Instagram spams my feed here. Andrew Krugler saying Ryan Gable. That sounds right. Yeah, at Alternative Golf Logos. That's them. Maybe a great resource to start if you're curious. Even his little captions do almost do tell the story of, hey, this pro came to me. There was like Brookfield in Ohio, I believe, had like a random like Knights helmet left. And there's some story of, when the club was there, this Knights helmet, all the members knew about it, and now they finally have it. Right. So right up your, that might be a great place to start if you're nervous about alternate logos, to learn some of the stories and why pros ultimately, will do something like that. Cool. Yeah, North Hills, that's correct. Krugler saying North Hills did one through them. Yeah. So great place to start there. Maybe I'll give one shout to Josue for an AI question. Do you think, there we go, JVF, Ryan's great to work. So there we go. Maybe start with alternative golf logos. Josue, do you see AI being able to, you talked about there's 400 different men's brands. Is there a program out there where you see maybe you're teaching the AI, hey, Mrs. McGillicuddy typically always buy long sleeve. She always buys purple, and she likes Sans Soleil. Is there a way to teach the AI to say, okay, so she probably likes the sun shirt material? What are alternate, is there a way to curate alternate brands for Mrs. McGillicuddy to check it? Have you learned about like teaching AI, your member trends?
I think with time, you're definitely going to see that, Derek. I mean, even now, if you go to simply to Chat GPT and you type in, hey, I'm looking for a golf trip gift ideas, $25 to $50 retail, it'll pull products, images, options within what the guidelines you've set forth. So with us that sometimes do a lot of events and we're always thinking, okay, what can we do differently this year? We need to be thinking outside the box. Those are ways that AI is now helping us to just make that decision or the idea generator go much faster and quicker than us trying to think of what rep carries that brand or who had this or who. You just go in and type. Just like most, again, I mean, AI is something that I'm becoming more and more familiar with. Being on the board of the AGM, being on the board of PGA Magazine, these conversations are coming up. And just like we did a minute ago about the alternate golf, logos, we're learning of like, oh, I found this AI that's now doing this. And, so I honestly think with time, it'll get to that point. Exactly the same sort of, scenario you just said of Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so that loves this brand or loves this color story and you want to offer them something. I think we're going to get to a point where you can go ahead, hey, I want purple color print options from as many golf vendor brands, and all of a sudden you're going to get a bunch of images from everything that might be available or that might still. So no, it's going to change the landscape over the next few years. And I think for those of us, who were the 70s, 80s that started kind of growing up with very little technology and understanding how quickly technology doubles itself, you're going to see a little bit of that in the AI, especially getting into the merchandising side. You go to New York, you go to California, you go to, the big retailers and stuff. You're already seeing a lot of things that golf has actually no idea is even out there yet. So over time, I think you're going to start to implement it. And just as I mentioned, I mean, some of these applications and stuff, some can be expensive, but over time they're going to become lesser cost, easier for golf clubs to introduce. So yeah.
Cool. Let's end it here. I got one parting thing for you guys to do here. So again, just on this alternate logo, looks like Quit Quiak, they found their third nine has a very unique following. So yeah, I mean, you got to find something to pull for it, but looks like everybody is ahead on that one. Maybe a 30-second parting thoughts here from Todd. Why do we think the golf space is so trendy right now? I mean, I think of Malbon. I mean, Sunday, like how Sunday Red all of a sudden just blew up, like out of nowhere, just when you thought there's no way there's room for another hoodie or another polo. Somehow a vendor tries and they break through. Maybe 30 seconds each. We'll end it with that of like, how the heck are they seeing value in golf?
I think despite the number, the 400 vendor number that we mentioned earlier, there's still opportunity because the market's just so big. It just speaks to how big golf and golf retail is. I mean, the worldwide golf apparel only market is $4.5 billion annually, with about over 1.5 billion of that coming from within the U.S. That's forecasted to double almost by 2033. So it's just, I think it's just that it's just there's just a lot of opportunity there, even though does seem crowded.
Sure. Josue, final thought on it? 30
I,
seconds.
I would say it's the aspect of nowadays it's becoming much easier to source and create your own brand. I could create a logo today, and I can help you source a T-shirt provider. I can help you source a polo quarter zip. The years of us creating our own brands and having to commit to 1,000, 2,000 units of a SKU, a color, a style is going away. You can now source from manufacturers, whether they're in Asia still or India or now Mexico, where now you can create your own T-shirt brand or polo brand, and you might need to just order 144 units of a SKU. So now anybody that has that idea of like, I want to create my own brand, I want it to be these colorful prints, these look and feel, you can invest on your whole new brand 10 to 20K, where before you had to spend a good amount of money, 6 figures or more, to just launch the product and get the product on hand. So I think that's where in the last few years we're seeing so many new vendors just getting into golf, is because a lot of people that play golf love it, and they, now the actual sourcing of a product and the fabric, the minimums, the cost has gone so less that I can go create my own Reyes retail line and start pushing
Mm-hmm.
it throughout the, however
Yeah.
deep I want. So I would say that's what we're seeing. But just like we've all experienced at the show, some will succeed, some will unfortunately end up failing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is, a lot of it now, it's heavily relationship based still for us and our
Sure.
buyers and our reps that we work with. But we're also looking for that new, different item out there. So that's where I feel like, you're seeing so many new vendors jumping into the
Very,
retail in the golf space. So
very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. This will end relatively abruptly. We'll privately thank you on the back end once everything logs off. 2 sessions to go tomorrow. The weather's turning. It's we can start to feel spring. Tomorrow we're learning about the differences of in-season versus off-season golf training, both for ourselves and for our students. And then on Thursday, we wrap it all up with personal fitness and personal wellness. We're going to start thinking about getting our steps in here as the weather changes. So spring is in the air. We're ending with some training and fitness stuff, and we'll see everybody tomorrow, hopefully. Gents, thank you so much. We'll see everybody.
Thanks, guys. Take
thank you
care.
guys. Have a good day.